Hello, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time it is that you are tuning into this. Hi, my name is Lindsay Smith. I am a partner success manager, client enable manager, whatever title you want to give me. I kind of been playing with the idea of just changing it every time I run these camps now. I am your host of this camp, and this camp is Get Supered 101. Purpose of this camp, webinar, training, whatever we want to call it, is to get you comfortable with where everything is located within Supered, get you comfortable with navigating Supered, and then we'll also dive into creating bases, cards, talking about triggers for cards, embedding your content, where your team is working, and all of that good stuff. A couple of housekeeping items while we let people kind of trickle in as they come in here. The recording for this call will be sent to you probably, I think it's like 45 minutes to an hour after we end the live. So if you aren't able to stick around for the whole thing, don't worry about it. You will get the recording sent to you into your emails. I do know that time is a precious commodity, especially in December. So if you aren't able to stay the whole time, don't worry about it. I understand. Other items here, the platform that we use is called Contrast, getcontrast.io. They are a fantastic partner to work with. If you are looking for a webinar platform, anything like that, just a little note on how their chat works. There's about a 10-second delay between what you put in on the audience side versus when it comes over to me on the speaker side. So if you do ask a question, I don't see it immediately, don't panic. I will see it. Just give it like 10 to 15 seconds for it to pop over onto my side. That being said, I fully encourage questions as we go along here. Don't worry about interrupting my flow. I definitely have ADHD, so I like having my flow interrupted. If you have ADHD, you get it. If you were in my book of business previously, you kind of understand how I work and how this goes. And honestly, let's hope we have a little bit of fun. I think these are fun. I like to do them. So hopefully you kind of enjoy the next 30 to 45 minutes of this as well. Last item of housekeeping is this is a little bit interactive. So what I mean by that is I found that it really helps if you pull up your Supereds along with me and kind of follow along as we go through Super, just so that you get the feel. If you fall into the camp of people that I like to call the Super curious, you haven't signed up with Supered yet, you're not a Supered user, you're not a Supered partner, you've just seen us on LinkedIn, all sorts of pink all over there, and you're like, you know what, I kind of want to find out, what this Supered's all about. You don't have it yet. Don't worry. You can sign up for a Supered account for free, and you will have 90% of the assets that we will talk about today in this camp. So definitely go ahead and do that. And then by the end, if you find that you want to become a Supered partner, let us know. I'm always happy to get you in touch with the team that can talk you through how to be a Supered partner, like how to get signed up for that level of access. Okay. I think that's all of my housekeeping items. I hope. We'll see. All right, let's get into it. I'm going to share my screen. Welcome to Supered. So right off the bat here, this is your Supered home screen. This is completely customizable. So you are able to put in the kind of content that you want your team seeing when they log into Supered. So you can put in announcements. You can put in like a Lucidchart, like a think board, think map, mind map. That's what I was going for. You can put in specific events that are happening that you want your team to attend or support or promote, anything like that. You can also put in a content panel that is like recently updated cards, so that there's always a running list of what cards have been updated. And we'll talk more about cards and kind of what you can put into them, what they are, a little bit later in this camp. Right underneath that, this is the tour part, by the way. I don't think I said that. Right underneath that, we have tasks. Tasks are directly related to our latest Supered asset called Action Plans. We will have a camp dedicated to action plans. Oh my gosh, my nose. A camp dedicated directly to action plans, how to create them, how to assign them, use cases for them. Those will be starting up after the holidays. So keep an eye out for that, where we go deeper into these, kind of how tasks can be assigned, all of that. For now, this is where they're located if you want to poke around in them. Then we move into updates. Updates are ways that you can push in-page announcements to your team members across any platform that you have Supered active on. Personally, in my humble opinion, I think that updates are criminally underused. And definitely, I think they should be used more often. We'll go into how to create an update in this camp as well. So, yay. Processes are process rules. Process enforcement process rules are a unique Supered asset in that they are the only one. They only work in HubSpot for right now and for the foreseeable future, honestly. Process rules help with adding in guardrails into the data into HubSpot. Again, this is one that we have a full camp dedicated to, where we go deeper into what process rules look like, how you can use them, how you can mold them, and how to create them. So we don't spend a whole lot of time here on this. We move into analytics. This is for my data nerds. This is gives you a high-level bird's eye view of how your team is using Supered, if they're looking at cards, if what they're searching for, if any of those searches are misses. So if there's a bad search, you can kind of check out what what the phrase they're looking for, so you can mold your content towards that utilization. Is if they're logging in, and guides are another Supered asset that we'll talk about building. And how often guides are being used, if they're being finished, things like that. So it just gives you that bird's eye level view of the numbers, right? Moving into packages, this is for Supered partners. This is a Supered partner feature. This is how you get your content to clients. And like process rules and action plans, we do have a separate camp for them. You can sign up for that where you signed up for this one. Because it's a Supered partner feature, I'm not going to dive too deeply into it. And then another Supered partner feature is this partner button, where it holds your managed accounts, your partner packages, billing, and Supered Studio. All right, let's talk bases. So to get to bases, a couple of ways, right? So you have it listed out here. If your account is brand squeaky new, you probably just have a Supered base in here. So you are able to create a base by hitting this plus sign, or you can just click on the word bases. It's not super intuitive without me telling you that you're able to do that. And it will bring up a screen that's just for bases. Again, if you're a brand new squeaky clean account, you don't have multiple bases, you probably have a couple of cards with 1 or 2 bases, right? If you have 3 or more, it will flip into this list view. So that's when your screen will look like mine, is if you have 3 or more bases. So let's create a base. Create base. We'll give it a name. I am criminally terrible at naming things. So mine's always going to be like demo, test, get Supered 101 and the date. If you have a real life use case for this, if you want to create a base full of definitions or a base full of best practices, whatever, go ahead and do that. Or you can do exactly what I'm doing. That's fine too. Within the base here, with this, before we move into actually creating it, we have a couple of other things that I want to go over, explain what they are. Hide content in Chrome extension. When you do this with a base, it will pull the content out of the Chrome extension. So what's the Chrome extension? That's Sidekick, right? So by that, I mean, let's pop over in here. I'll show you. Sidekick, Chrome extension. So I would be hiding information there. You can hide that. What that will do is pull out the cards and any triggers and anything that you have added into those cards out of the Chrome extension, so they're not showing up. And then we have archived. Archiving is the answer to deleting, so you don't have to delete content that you've created. This makes my scarred student heart happy. If you've ever spent like all night in a library writing a paper and then it deletes itself and it's gone, it's painful. I'm pretty sure you get some traumatic stress from that. So archiving is a way that you don't have to delete it. I am of the personality of, but what if I need it? I've created it, I've spent time on it. I don't want to delete it fully, but I don't need it right now. You can archive it. The other thing I want to point out is access control. Access control is really useful if you are creating bases for specific teams. You don't need every other team to have access to. So specifically, like within Supered, how do we use this? How do we use access control? We have a base that only our leadership team has access to, within it. I don't really know what's in it, but I can guess is like plans for teams, performance notes, things like that, right? Things that you don't need the whole company to have access to, just specific people. So this is where you're able to add users to that access control. Now, if you are creating content for everybody, you don't need to worry about access control. You can just leave it. So we're going to hit create. It's going to create it. Perfect. Now let's pop into it. So the question I get a lot from new Supered users is, how do I think about structuring bases? How do I think about organizing them? A good thought process to kind of go into it is, if you start thinking about, like, say, like your Google Drive, right? And you have your master folders and then you nest folders within that. That's a good way to think of bases as well. So your base itself is like your master folder, where, it's contains a certain, like, I don't know where that thought was going. It contains like a subject, right? A certain subject. And then within it, you have your sub-subjects. Is that a thing? I don't think that's a thing. But you get what I'm saying. So you can nest folders within a base. So if you think of it like your base is your master folder, and then you can put sub information within it, that's a good way to approach it. Other ways that I have seen work with other partners when they start really organizing and getting into their bases is creating bases via the platform that you want it to be talking about. So if you're working on multiple platforms, like say you're working in, HubSpot, LinkedIn, you can even have like Supered, how you want your team to be using their Supered accounts. Create separate bases for each of those things. I've also seen, like, specifically for Supered partners, creating bases for each of their clients, right? So if they want to keep content separate from their clients, they don't need to reuse it. They can create separate bases for each client, just sort of depending on how you want to approach it. But that being said, other questions on that? Again, I encourage questions as they come up. Just throw them in the chat. I will pause what I'm saying, honestly. Cool. So let's create a card. So if you come into the base that we just created and you hit this plus sign, it gives you these 4 options: create a card, create a folder, create a guide, or create an action plan, right? So for this first little part of the camp, we are going to focus on creating a card, but I love organization, so you can create a folder if you want to, and then create a card within it. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to create a folder just with today's date, and we're going to create a card within that. So a couple of ways you can get the card into the folder. You can just create the card and then drag it into it, or use the smaller plus sign. So let's create a card. The way that cards are structured should feel pretty familiar, should feel like most word processors you've ever used, right? The difference and where cards get powerful is being able to put in different types of content. So what's a card, right? You'll probably hear anyone that works with Supered or for Supered uses the word card a lot. What a card is your content. That's instruction that you give to your teams. It's training videos. It's mind maps. It's literally anything, right? I make the Mean Girls joke all the time that the limit does not exist, which can feel overwhelming. It can feel like it's too much that you don't know where to start. I always suggest starting with questions that you have answered 1,000 times. Someone asks you a question, that goes into a card immediately, right? Into an FAQ base. Or definitions. If you find yourself having to define things a lot, definition base immediately, right? So those are really good places to start. I really like the fact that you can embed other content into it so you don't have to recreate it, right? So if you have a PDF that you want people to use, you don't have to go copy paste it into a card. You can backslash and embed that content into the Supered card. So if you have a PDF you've already created, go ahead, put it into the card. And why would you do that, right? You already have this PDF. The why becomes being able to embed the card where your team is working so they don't have to move away from it. That's your why. You already have this created. They're not looking at it. Great. Put it into a Supered card and then we can embed it. Love it. I don't have one at the ready. I should, but it's a Tuesday. I don't know. I don't have one at the ready. So I am just going to put in a little bit of content, a little bit of meat to the card. We're just going to call it Let's Get Supered in December. And that's my card, and we're going to create it. So you've heard me use the phrase, put the card where your team is working as they're working, I think a couple of times in this call already. So let's go over kind of what I mean by that. I mean 2 things, honestly. So if you don't want to trigger it, and we'll talk about how to trigger in just a second, if you just want it to live in Sidekick, we can come back over into a site that you have Supered active on, open up Sidekick, and let's search that phrase. There's our card, right? So our card shows up and it has that information. So back to my PDF example, if you have that PDF of, an order of operations that you need your team to be following, say you have a specific way that you want like sales to prospect on LinkedIn, then they can have this on their screen next to them on the right-hand side as they're moving through, and Sidekick stays open as you navigate through, different windows, all of that stuff, right? So, your information, that PDF that they're not looking into in that Google Drive is now front and center on, on their screen, right? Well, right, front and right. It's not centered. Sometimes cliches don't work, but your girl likes a cliche. I really do. I will speak solely in cliches if I can. So it's a very powerful use case for putting your information right where your team is working. So they don't have to dig through files, emails, anything. You can just put it right into a super card right there. The other way that this gets really cool is being able to trigger it so that it shows up when it recognizes a phrase on a page, right? So how do I create a trigger? Well, first of all, I'm going to kick Sidekick out of here so I get my screen back. And we're going to come to triggers, obviously, right? Duh. So we're going to click on triggers, and this gives us this little pop-up. We're going to hit create trigger, and it will specifically look for text that is already in the card title. So the first trigger that you create for a card will be the title of the card. Just so you're aware, it is useful if you have like definitions that you're doing or something specifically for a specific phrase, then you don't have to type it out. But say I want to put it into HubSpot itself, right? Let's go into, see, here. But we're going to go into companies and say I want it to show up on company name, right? You have a specific order of operations for company name, like maybe it's a naming convention. It's company name dash and then like a date that they became a lead or something like that, right? All you have to do here is put in company name for the text that it's looking for. A couple of notes on triggers and how they work. It is looking for that text everywhere that you have Supered active, right? So if company name shows up on LinkedIn, it will also show this card. So it's good to know that that will happen. It is not case sensitive as you're putting in trigger the phrase. So you don't need to worry about capitalizing anything, but it is space sensitive. So if you're looking at the trigger, everything is spelled correctly. You have Supered active where you need it to be active to show up, all of that, and it's still not showing up. Double check that you don't have any additional spaces in your phrase before or after it. And last thing of note, well, second to last thing. There's the last thing. Second last thing of note here is you can change the icon, right? So you can indicate different pieces of content with the icon itself. So if it's like an FAQ or a best practice, you can use the fire sign. If it's straight up informational, it's just this is how you do this, you can use the info sign, anything like that. If you are a Supered partner and you are white labeled, you are able to create your own custom trigger icons. So use case like why we have some of our Supered users here is to indicate which account manager holds an account, right? So we created triggers on cards to indicate via, name. So if we have sales scrolling through LinkedIn, someone comments something positive on Supered, which would make, sense to prospect into them if they didn't know if they were already a customer. This helps indicate, right? Just kind of cuts down on time. Let's go with a star. We'll save that trigger. Oh, I did promise a very last thing, right? Very last thing here is visibility. You can bring it down to page restriction. So if I only wanted it to show on this very specific page of HubSpot, I can bring it down to only show here. So it would only show on that page where it was recognizing company name. Okay, but let's see that in action. Come over here, we'll refresh our page. And there's the card that we created. So it's our second way of putting your information for your team where they're working as they're working. They don't need to go back through a Google Drive or anything. They have it right there in front of them. This one is front and center, so I can use that one here. Well, it's still not really centered, but y'all get it. Y'all feel me. Okay. The very last thing with cards that I want to cover is creating a card directly from the Chrome extension. So say you're in your flow of work and you're doing a process and you're like, you know what, actually, it would be really great if I created a super card for this and put it, on the first step of this process, or put, defining something, right? Anything like that. And you don't want to have to go back into Supered and do that whole process that we just did, right? You don't have to. You can just pop open Sidekick and you can create a base directly from the Chrome. You'll create a card directly from the Chrome extension. All you have to do is hit that plus sign and create a card, and it brings up the card editor within Sidekick. So you can add in all of that information that you were thinking of. You can add in your steps as you're going through it. You can describe like a life cycle stage. Maybe you've created a life cycle stage, something like that. And you can also create an embedded trigger directly from the Chrome extension. And you can also control what base it goes into from here. So if you created it and it's saying, it's going into this action plan ones, but you actually wanted it in that Supered 101 base, you can switch the base that it's in. And you can decide what folder within that base it goes into. So you do have a little bit of control within Sidekick as you are creating content there. But I don't need to create a card. We just did. Okay. So that's cards, creating cards, and creating bases. Questions so far? I haven't seen any come through. So hopefully, I'm pretty sure y'all are following. But if you're not, speak up. This is one of those moments, like when I pause there, that I always am sitting here going, this is so awkward. It's such an awkward silence that I almost wish I could play like Jeopardy music or something. Anyway, so moving on, let's talk about guides, right? So creating guides in your base. Bases are your housing for your content. Your content is anything that you deliver. To create a guide is quite simple. Again, you hit that plus sign. So if you want it to live in a specific folder, hit the little one, or if you're okay with it being in a no folder structure, you can hit the big one. We'll hit record guide. What this is going to do is it's going to pop open the windows that I have open, the browser windows I have open. And so this is where if you are creating a guide specifically for a specific process, you want to go to that window. So, I mean, what's a guide, right? A guide is a step-by-step map of how to do something. And you'll see what I mean in a second. So let's go to LinkedIn. It's a safe space, right? I'm not going to accidentally show company secrets somehow, which is like a worst fear. I mean, there's not a whole lot that I could really do, honestly, that I could show on these lives, but it's a fear. It's a fear. So in LinkedIn here, it pops us over into the window, into the browser window, and then it pops up in Sidekick. And in Sidekick, it's showing me that it is now recording steps. So as I click around into a process, if I have a specific process that I want my team to follow, I would complete that process with the guide recording. I'll give it a couple of steps here so that we can talk about editing in a second. But as I was clicking around, you saw that the steps increased as well as the counter down here into 4. So it was following my my clicks and my navigation. It would also follow keystrokes if I was typing in anything. So on that note, some of the controls that we have as you're recording, we have this check mark, which is if you are completed with your guide, right? You don't have any more steps you need to record, you can complete it. And this pause button. This pause button is if you need to move to another window that has maybe some sensitive information that you don't want it recording those keystrokes, so such as like a password. You can pause the recording and then restart it once you've logged in. And we also have delete cancel, right? So if you're through it and you're like, I don't actually need this, or I need to redo it, like this isn't actually the window I want to be showing, something like that, you can just delete. But we're gonna say okay. We're gonna name it, because again, I'm sorry if you're expecting like clever titles, I don't have that for you. And like creating a card from the Chrome extension, it gives you the control too of putting it into a different base. So if there's a different base that you wanted this to show up in, you can do that here as well as the folder. So we're going to create the guide, Cool. What does it look like when you first have it? There's that step-by-step that I was talking about. We also have in-app guidance, which I went back one too far, which if you hit guide me, it will pop you into the window and it gives you this glowing box. I like to call that follow the bouncing ball, which I fully stole from a partner. He calls this kind of training, this kind of guidance, the follow the bouncing ball, right? Because it encourages you to follow along. Okay. Come back to Supered. So those are guides, right? So a couple of ways that you can deliver guides to your clients, to your users, to whomever is, it will live in Sidekick itself underneath that base. So if I came into that base, I lost my base, guys. I would lose my head if it wasn't attached to me. So there's that. I think I've lost my mind. It would live in the base. I'm looking in cards. That's why I can't find it. We're going to pretend that didn't happen. I totally know what I'm doing. To find the guide, it will be in its own section of Sidekick under guides, and you'll be able to find it there. You can also attach it to a card. There we go. I didn't mess up. I was just a step ahead of myself. You can attach it to the card. So if we came into this card right here and we hit edit, came into the body and /guide, we can add in that guide that we just created. I don't remember what I called it. I think that's the other part. Goldfish brain, guys. And we select that guide. It will add it in there. And then I can find it in my cards in Sidekick. By adding it into a card as well, you can embed a process using the trigger. So if I came in and refreshed the page here, I can come back to that card and we have some layered process, right? So we not only have a definition of something, we can also show a step-by-step guide of how to do it. Pretty powerful stuff. Where they're working as they're working. They don't even have to go anywhere if they don't want to. Okay. Sorry, I laugh at myself. You laugh or you cry, right? So from here, if there's no questions on creating bases, creating cards, creating guides, embedding your cards, embedding your guides, we will move up into updates and talk about those. So if y'all come up to updates with me, let's look at updates. What are updates? Updates are ways that you can push in page announcements to your team. So how they appear is they'll appear as like an iframe, essentially pop up with the information. Internally, the way that Supered uses this, so like Supered on Supered, is our CEO will send out thoughts on Fridays of things that he's seen that he's liked, things that possibly he needs us to work on, announcements coming through. Our engineering team, I think, is our superstar in using updates the most. Whenever they push a new update to the product or a fix to the product that maybe a bug has been reported and they're pushing the update out, they will send an update to everybody on the team so that we see it as we're working where we're working. And it goes everywhere that you have Supered active. So creating an update is like creating anything else in Supered. You hit that create button up in the top right. You can give it a title. I'm not publishing this, so I'll just put in 101. And you can determine what display type you want. So pop-up model is louder. It's in the middle of the screen, hard to ignore. Or you can do the banner if there's information that's not critical, but it's still important to send it out. You can do the banner at the bottom. You can change who it's sent by. So if you want it to be sent by like an entire team, say, people operations is sending a reminder about submitting time cards when they need to get those submitted to people operations. You can send out an update sent by people operations. It can be approved time cards. If you're a Supered partner, you have access to this partner button. This is quite useful if you have multiple managed accounts that you want to send updates to, say like you have open office hours, or, there's an update if you're a HubSpot partner, if there's an update in HubSpot that, you're offering now to help create or build in accounts, you only have to create that update once, and then you can decide what client accounts it gets pushed into. You don't need to access each client account to write that update over and over again. Audience, you can bring down who sees it. So for my Supered users, you do need to be on a Scale or Pro license. This is not a free feature. So if you're on Scale or Pro, you are able to bring down to specific users and groups. If you only need sales to see something, or if you only need like your boss to see something, you can do that. You can change the number of days that the update is shown. And you can also predetermine the launch date. So if it's like a Friday afternoon and there's something that you want someone to action on a Monday morning, or information that would stick better on a Monday morning than a Friday afternoon, you can predetermine that launch date. And you can also put in like restricted domains too. So if there's specific pages you want it to show up on, you can do that here. Media, you can connect a card. So if you have specific information that is a little bit long to put into the body of the update, you can connect the card that has like the full Monty. Can I say that? I was told it was inappropriate once, and I don't really want to look it up. I'm scared. There's certain things I just don't want to Google. I don't need my engineering team to be like, why do you Google these things at work? I Google history, guys. Most of it's like how to spell really common words, but there's some that's, I don't know, I would get a cocked head at. Anyway, so you can connect a card that has full information on it. You can also put an external URL. So a good reason for connecting an external URL that I've seen is I have a client that anytime sales closes a deal and they pass it off to their client success team, they give the person that's receiving it an update that like connects to that client's website so they can kind of familiarize themselves with that client before the first call. So it's like time saved, right? There's less time spent getting to know this person. And media type, you can do an image or you can do a video, and that will appear at the top of the update. I'll show you what that means in just a second. But if we want to, this is why I name everything the same thing, because it saves time in trying to find it. So let's connect a card. And then analytics will show you who is seeing it, who's completed it, who's snoozed it, all of that good stuff. If I were to preview it, this is what the update would look like everywhere that I have it being shown. So everywhere I have Supered active, this is what the update will show. It will be that information, and it will force me to view the card. What this does is when I click view card, it will pop open Sidekick with all of the card's information in it. Okay, that's updates. Questions on updates. I'm gonna cancel that. I don't need to send that to this demo account. Okay, so from here, where are we going? We're going to talk about settings, because I have definitely said where you have Supered active at least 10 times. Just kidding. I don't think it's been that much, but I have said it. So where do you control that? That's in settings. So you can get to settings a couple of ways. You can use this drop down up at the top here, or if you want to come down to the logo that you have on the left-hand side, it will take you to the same spot. And then we have our settings here. In settings, extension is where you want to go to manage where you have Supered active. So where you want it to show up. So like we have it active for this managed account that I'm in, this demo account that I'm playing in. We have it active like on LinkedIn. Our full Supered accounts are my official Supered account. It's active, I think, everywhere. We scroll for a little bit on these managed extension settings, but it's like our Gmail, so our G Suite, right? Anywhere that we have Google, LinkedIn, HubSpot, obviously, all sorts of places that we have Supered active on. And this is how you can kind of control that. All right. There's also, if you're a partner, you have further partner settings in here. They will also have like white label settings in there too if you're a partner. So you can check out what white label settings that we have, like specifically for our white labels. If you're just a super partner, you can look at that. If that is something that you want to upgrade to, let us know. We're happy to talk about that and what that entails. Okay. All right, guys. That is the Tour Guide Barbie version of Get Supered 101. What a great character Tour Guide Barbie was. Anyway, thank you so much for spending the last 35 minutes with me talking about one of my favorite subjects, with Supered and kind of where everything's located, creating cards and content and getting that to your teams at where they're working as they're working. If you have questions, I highly encourage asking them in our Slack community, Super Jam. I will put the link in to the chat here so you have access to it. Go ahead and join it. It's a free community where you can ask questions, get them answered. Anything that is a burning Supered question, the entire team's over there, so you can DM if you want to. We all kind of have unhealthy addictions to our phones, so we'll probably see it pretty quickly. Yeah, recording for this will be sent out 45 minutes to an hour after the live ends, if not by end of day. And of course, thank you again. I appreciate it. And as always, stay awesome, stay strong, and stay Supered, guys. Bye.